Welcome back to On the Move. This is week 2 of this new show. It is Monday, December 5th, and I am Victor Shi, still, just like last week. So this week we're going to talk about, or guys, today we're going to talk about Donald Trump and all the investigations into him. He is arguably the first president that my generation, Gen Z, paid attention to. We saw his repeated attempts to divide this country by chastising immigrants. We saw his repeated attempts to break norms and traditions that define the presidency. We saw how he literally incited an insurrection against the U.S. government on January 6th of 2021, and all of those things continue to this day. Yet even despite all of this, he has faced basically zero accountability and justice. So today I'm bringing on the perfect person, I think, to talk about all of the cases pending against the former disgraced, twice impeached president, and whether or not this time we'll finally see Trump held accountable, and why this all matters to Gen Z, because that may be the only chance we have to keeping this man from ever holding office again and putting an end to his dangerous and divisive rhetoric. So with that, I'm excited to have on Allison Gill, aka Mueller, she wrote on Twitter, who has been such an important voice in shedding light on the various legal issues and legal woes facing Trump and helping us all make sense of very complex and confusing legal jargon and matters. So Allison, thank you so much for coming on today and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Victor. It's great to see you. And by the way, excellent work in Georgia and in the midterms, my friend.
Thank you. And Georgia's not done yet, so we have one more day, but fingers crossed there. And I know we'll be all anxiously awaiting to see what the results are, but I'm feeling bullish. How about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bullish too.
Definitely. So there are so many places to start when it comes to talking about everything that Trump is facing. But I thought over the weekend, I heard Joyce Vance say that last week may have been the worst week for Donald Trump when it comes to all the investigations into him. Can you help us make sense of why last week was particularly bad for Trump?
There were a lot of things that happened, but I think the main thing that happened last week that was really bad for Trump was the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals had granted the Department of Justice their motion to vacate Judge Cannon's order appointing a special master, saying she had no equitable jurisdiction, which was what we were expecting because it was the exact same finding that they had with regard to the classified documents about a month and a half ago. And so jurisdiction is jurisdiction, whether the documents are classified or non-classified. And that's what they were doing here. There was a broader appeal. They just went for the classified documents first because of the urgency of doing the national security risk assessment of him having those documents at Mar-a-Lago, where folks like Ye and Nick Fuentes can just walk in without being carded. So I think that was probably the most significant thing to happen bad for Mr. Trump last week.
So what does that now mean for the Department of Justice and what it has access to, and how worried should Trump be after that 11th Circuit decision?
He should be very worried. And I think we saw him be very worried publicly on his Truth Social, which is under federal criminal investigation, with his truths about we need to terminate the Constitution, for example, and reinstall me as president.
Oh my gosh.
What it means now is that the DOJ can get back all of the documents, non-classified documents, 11,000 to 13,000 or so, that were in the possession of Judge Deary and the Trump attorneys. So, as part of a special master review, which was found by the 11th Circuit to be, it have no jurisdiction to do that. And the reason that that's important, and I talked to Andrew McCabe, the co-host of my new show, You Don't Know Jack, about this, because he's very familiar with these kinds of classified documents investigations. It's important to prove that he had possession and use of them when you can show that they were commingled with non-classified documents. For example, they found 3 letters mixed with some classified documents in Trump's desk. And those letters were dated after he left the White House. So that shows a current sort of that commingling is actual evidence of a crime of possessing those classified documents. So that I think is why this is very, very important. We couldn't really, Jack Smith, who is now the special counsel, couldn't really move forward with the investigation and therefore move forward with an indictment without that evidence. And now he's going to get it back very soon.
So I have many questions about Jack Smith and also about your new podcast, which is amazing. I urge everyone to check it out. It's called You Don't Know Jack, and it's with you and Andrew McCabe, and you guys had on Hugo Lowell yesterday as your first guest. Just such an amazing podcast and helps us really make sense of that special counsel investigation. But I want to ask you more about Judge Cannon, because she's one of those Trump-appointed judges who really, I think, has no experience. She has, I think, clearly sided with Trump. And for those who don't follow the legal news closely or don't really kind of I guess, understand the whole special counsel, not special counsel, the special master situation. I'm wondering, do you think that was an effort by her to help Trump yet again delay and kind of avert justice?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And there's another judge in a different case because a while back, Trump sued Hillary Clinton and everyone who was involved in the Crossfire Hurricane Russia investigation.
Yeah.
And he went judge shopping down to that district to try to get Judge Eileen Cannon on that case as well. But he ended up with Judge Middlebrooks instead. And Middlebrooks, in a footnote in his decision, in his ruling to toss out the case, said, you were judge shopping here. You were looking for favorable, a judge favorable to your position. It's not me. And then they got hit with sanctions for filing that fraudulent suit. By the way, the day that they found out that they got hit with sanctions for filing that lawsuit, Trump filed another frivolous lawsuit against New York Attorney General Tish James and went judge shopping again to try to get Judge Eileen Cannon and ended up with Judge Middlebrooks again. So I'm not expecting very favorable treatment on that lawsuit either. I think that Tish James should file a motion for sanctions as well. So sanctions meaning basically you got to pay all the fees for this because this is a frivolous lawsuit. So that's kind of what was going on with that judge shopping. He was most definitely looking for a judge that would be favorable to his needs, his need being to delay as long as possible because the inevitable here, at least according to Andy McCabe, who said, I can't see him not being indicted in this case.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. So let's talk about Jack Smith and your new podcast. Tell us a little bit about the podcast and this move by the Department of Justice to appoint a special master. There was a lot of talk on Twitter when this came out. There were some people who were against it. There were some people who were for it. Walk us through what you view this special counsel to do and why this is such an effective choice to appoint someone like Jack Smith to lead that effort.
Well, I was initially very happy about this appointment. I've been asking for a special master since October of 2021. Yeah. I know I've had discussions with folks like Asha Rangappa because of the benefits of a special counsel. And some of the benefits are speed. That's all. They're only focused on this one thing. Whereas the DC U.S. attorney right now is focused on thousands of boots on the ground defendants in the attack on the Capitol, the physical attack on the Capitol, plus anything else that's going on in that district. So there's that. There's transparency because a special counsel has to tell you not only if they decide to charge someone, but they have to tell you if they decline to charge Trump and why they declined to charge Trump for any of the crimes that were within the scope and his scope is very broad. And so that I love that transparency because with just the Department of Justice, if Merrick Garland, for example, was protecting Trump and just wanted to make this whole thing go away, he could have just gotten an Office of Legal Counsel memo that says, he could have gone to his PAYDAG and his Office of Legal Counsel. They could have written up a memo that says, here's why we aren't charging any crimes. Then they could have hidden it away from the public under the guise, or not the guise, but the actual reality of what's called deliberative process privilege. We saw this play out with a 2019 Bill Barr memo in his discussions with his Office of Legal Counsel on why he was not going to charge Donald Trump with obstruction of justice. Now, they didn't have a good legal reason for that to be protected by deliberative process privilege. So we got to see that memo. But this particular Department of Justice would have had a good reason, and we would never know why they chose not to prosecute Donald Trump. For example, they recently chose not to prosecute Rudy Giuliani pursuant to the search warrant, lawfully executed search warrant on his office back in April of 2018. Southern District of New York just came out and said, we're not pressing charges. And they didn't have to explain what they were even looking at or why, because the DOJ doesn't have to do that, but a special counsel per the special counsel regs has to do that. And that's what I was most concerned about. Yeah. If you don't prosecute any of these MRFers, I need to know exactly why. I need to know your reasons. I probably will vehemently disagree with them.
Mhm.
But that way we get to see whether or not they're using some sort of prosecutorial discretion or political motivation to not bring these charges rather than the rule of law.
Yeah.
And that is very important to me and a lot of people that I know, that Donald Trump is not above the law.
Yeah, that's so important. So I want to quickly shift gears to January 6th. I know we met for the first time in person watching the first hearing at Kathy Griffin's house. The House is about to flip to Republican at the beginning of the year in 2023. Tell us what that means for the committee and its work, and what you think the next steps for the committee are before, I guess, the Republicans take over.
Sure. Well, even if the Dems had held the House, which we came very close to doing,
Yes,
by the
very
way,
close.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gen Z. Even if the Dems had kept the House, the committee would be over at the end of this Congress for several reasons. First of all, it's the end of the Congress, and that's when they said in their resolution outlining, their charter for who they are and what they're doing was going to end with this one, I think it's the 117th Congress. And also, many of the members are retiring. They were district and gerrymandered out, like Kinzinger, for example. They lost their primaries. Liz Cheney, for example, they aren't going to be in the House anymore. So if the Dems had held the House, we would have to, if we wanted to, reform an entirely new committee and get the whole new resolution again, and then reissue everything, all the subpoenas and everything. So, and that was never the plan. The plan was to get this done before this Congress is out. But we held the Senate, and hopefully we're about to get 51, which means we get not only the gavels, but we don't have to make a power sharing agreement. We don't have to have the same number of Republicans and Dems in each committee. So, for example, the Senate Judiciary Committee, which was investigating January 6th prior to the House committee taking over, the 1-6 Select Committee taking over, can take that work back up again if they so choose.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be stymied by a weird power sharing agreement. And that's why that's one of the reasons why 51st Senator is so important, outside of the fact that Raphael Warnock is just an absolutely incredible senator and a superior senator to Herschel Walker.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I hear a lot from young people is that they understand the importance of what happened on January 6th, but they don't really pay attention that much to all of the investigations into Trump and the January 6th hearings. Why do you think it's so important for Gen Z to pay attention to all the investigations in January 6th? And why does it matter to our generation, do you think?
Well, I think it matters to your generation, first of all, because if the rule of law does not exist in this country, it is going to be a lot harder to keep democracy in place. And I know that is one of the top line things for Gen Z voters is like, it's our democracy now.
Yeah.
And we need to take care of it and protect it. And I think one of the main reasons it's important to sort of pay attention to these investigations and how long they take and how involved they are and the process is because I think it's important for Gen Z to know what the bureaucracy looks like, so that if they want to fix and or change it, they will know how it currently runs, so they know what needs to be fixed if they want to speed things up in the future, for example. Also, I think it's important to know that one election does not fix democracy. It is a lifetime full contact sport. And I don't want young voters to become disillusioned with all the work that they've put into 2020 and 2022 and to see the changes they want not immediately happen. It's because of the processes we have in place in government, and that can be fixed, modified, changed in the future once Gen Z starts getting more and more positions in the government. But you need to know how it functions now and how it's been functioning for so long to be able to modify it or make changes or improve it. And that's why I think it's so very important to understand these very long drawn out processes of how government functions. You saw a lot of it when you were interning at the White House.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I just always think back when you were saying how this should be, every election should be important. We shouldn't become disillusioned and just tap out after all of our work. I think back to one of the quotes that my AP government teacher told all of us that has stuck with me to this day. And that's, we should all be embracing the civics lifestyle. This is something that should be lifelong. Every election is important, whether it's every 2 years, but we should always be involved during off election years. This is something that affects all of us, and it takes us to be always vigilant, to always turn out to vote, and that's really important. One last question for you: do you think Trump will face some sort of accountability this time around, and how quickly do you think that's coming?
I've had the same prediction since forever, which is in the January 6th case.
Yeah.
And when I put it up against the Watergate timeline with regard to when the hearings happened, when the break-in happened, when they got the evidence they needed, how long it took to get the Supreme Court decisions, and then how long it took to indict, that puts us, if we follow the Watergate timeline, in April of next year, that we would start seeing some indictments in the January 6th fraudulent elector scheme, Penn's pressure, to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power and obstruct an official proceeding, defrauding the United States, etc. And that would be fast, because Watergate was a parking ticket compared to what happened on January 6th.
Yes.
But we also need to consider, a lot of people say, oh, tick-tock, time is a ticking. And there is a little bit of a clock. I've always said there's no clock. The DOJ works as the DOJ works, but there is a little bit of one. You want to finish those trials up before the election, before the 2024 election, which would mean those indictments would need to come sometime in the middle of next year. Now, with the documents case, and I'm just going to quote Andy McCabe here because he's more of an expert on these things than I am. This is why I bring in experts. He says that is like a 3/4 baked loaf of bread. And we just really need to get those documents back from the special master, which is why that 11th Circuit decision was so detrimental to Donald.
Yeah.
And he thinks he can't see a scenario in which he is not indicted for those documents. And I know that's a little bit of lawyer speak, right? Like, he's not saying he will be indicted. He's saying, I can't see how he won't be.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, and January, like pretty quickly.
Wow. Well, we will definitely be paying attention to that. AG, thank you so much for coming on, and it was so great chatting with you. There's really no one better to explain all the news of the day and help us make sense of these issues than you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Everybody follow me at Mueller, She Wrote, and check out You Don't Know Jack. Please subscribe.
Definitely
We beat Ben Shapiro. We're number 2.
Number 2, yes. Amazing. Check it out. Follow Allison on Mueller, She Wrote. Listen to all her podcasts, Mueller, She Wrote, Daily Beans, You Don't Know Jack. They are so great. Thank you, Allison, for coming on.
Thanks, Victor. Thanks for all your work. Really, truly, incredibly proud of you.
Thank you. So justice and accountability, they are hopefully going to come very, very quickly against Trump. But let's quickly talk about the news of the day in the remaining time that we have left. First, as we briefly mentioned on the podcast over the weekend, just when you thought Trump couldn't say anything crazier or dumber, he said something crazier and dumber when he called for the termination of the U.S. Constitution, basically just full-throatedly. And this is, I think, a case in point of this man and why he's so dangerous. Every single day that he's allowed to speak and go on Truth Social and tweet, he becomes a greater threat for democracy, for the rule of law, for the Constitution, because his followers actually support and believe him. They follow his words, they listen to his words, they pay attention. And even worse, you see the Republican Party, the majority of them still hasn't yet condemned what's happened. They still won't say that, the termination of the U.S. Constitution is just wrong. Yesterday we saw Liz Cheney come out, I think every single Republican should come out just like Liz Cheney did and basically call Trump an enemy of the U.S. Constitution. I mean, he's nothing less than that anymore. He's someone who doesn't want to see democracy thrive. He wants to destroy democracy. And I think this is why Gen Zers are so overwhelmingly voting for Democrats this time around. I mean, you're seeing a couple of weeks ago, the number of Gen Zers who voted for Republicans just dropped dramatically. And I think it's because you're seeing a lot of these Republicans just make it clear that they don't care about, one, our future, and also our democracy, which is going to be where we're going to live in, where we're going to have to grow up in. And so this is concerning on all levels, and we should all be paying attention to this because it's going to affect all generations, especially Gen Zers. The one other thing that I'm paying attention to is this is the last day before Election Day in Georgia for the runoff election. If you know anyone in Georgia, encourage them to go out there and vote tomorrow. Stay in lines. As long as they're in line before polls close, they can stay in line and cast their ballot. So make sure that you get out the vote. Make sure you encourage all of your friends and anyone you know in Georgia to either mail in their ballot or stay in line or go and vote, because it's so important. Just like Allison said, that 51st seat matters so much. It means that every committee can have a majority of Democrats, and the things that we can accomplish then become so much more apparent and all the more likely with the 51 majority Senate. So make sure that you go out there and encourage all your friends to vote. Voters of Tomorrow is still doing phone banks and text banking. And tomorrow, for anyone who's a student in Georgia, they can get free Uber rides to and from the polls. So make sure that you get them out there and voting, because every single vote matters tomorrow, and we need Reverend Warnock to win. We cannot possibly afford to elect someone like Herschel Walker. So that's what I'll be paying attention to this week. Tomorrow we'll be back with a new episode where I'll do a deep dive into one of the issues facing Gen Zers and why it's so important. So if you have anything that you're paying attention to, drop them in the comments on YouTube or tweet them using the hashtag #OnTheMove or mentioning my username at VictorShe2020. We'll be back tomorrow for a new episode of On the Move, bright and early at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time on youtube.com/Politicon, which is a channel that you're watching. Be sure to subscribe, click the bell for our daily notifications, and like this video and share it with all your friends. It really does make a huge difference. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.